Alright, so I wanted to start making this video, but instead I was chasing this fly. But now I'm ready to make it. So, what I want to do is give you a brief overview. Hey, stop moving the chair there. Quiet, I'm making a video. Just wait for you to sit down. Alright, so anyway, my intention is to make a video that shows you very briefly kind of an overview of the concepts we're going to learn basically the first half of the semester. So we're going to spend the first half kind of learning the basic skills you need to be able to make creative pictures, and then the second half of the semester you kind of get to show off what you know and actually make creative pictures, whereas the first half is really more about learning technical skills. And what I want to do right now is kind of go over what some of those technical skills are and demonstrate some of them for you. The basic terms that you're going to need to know is depth of field, which we're going to control with our aperture. So I'll show you right here that oh, come on. There you go. Once you take the aperture lock off. So you can see the aperture here is wide open, and then that's so that's f22 right there. So big number, small hole, and this is f1.8 there, which is a small number, big hole. Kind of do it again so you can see, and we go 16. Or I'm sorry, start this way. 22, 16. 11, except for I jumped over 11, 8, 5.6, 4, 1.8, Anyway, it's hard to hold it here, but you get the idea. 22's here, small hole, 1.8 here, big hole. Not every lens goes all the way to 1.8. More expensive lenses tend to have wider maximum apertures. 2.8 is kind of the gold standard. There are a handful, like this one, that go to 1.8. Or even 1.4, I think I've seen 1.2 on occasion. Very rare, very expensive lenses. But a lot of your lenses that you're buying to use it for this class are going to go to like f4 or 5.6 is going to be your bottom end. But it's fine. The other thing we're going to work on a little bit, the other kind of control we have is shutter speed. And that's how long your camera is open. Let's see if mine will even work with the lens off. Oh, come on. Okay, so it does. So, go fast shutter speed would be maybe 1/500th of a second. This is fast, right? Or slow shutter speed would maybe be, here we'll go to 1/8 of a second, or 1 second. Okay, and so those are the two controls you have. Your aperture, which is in the lens, and it controls how much light you're letting in, and it controls focus, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. But, and then you've got your shutter speed, and that's how long you're opening up the shutter to light. In photography, just, you're a total nerd. In Latin means drawing with light. Photo, light, graph to draw. So it is all about the light. I'm going to very briefly go actually over in the yard here, and I'll show you what it looks like to overexpose and underexpose. Overexpose means giving too much light, so either you've had your aperture open too wide or the shutter open too long. And either way we can accumulate more light. But that's really all I have to say for this, except for now I'm going to go and actually demo it. So this is my assistant Elsa. This is a truck that's coming by at an inopportune time to make a little noise for the video. Come on, dude, you should know better than to drive past when I'm doing things in the yard. Anyway, I'm going to show you a little bit about depth of field. It kind of works like this, as I've shown you before. If I want a large depth of field, a lot in focus, I'm going to have it like that at f22, and if I'm trying to do a shallow depth of field where just Elsa is in focus and you can see the entire background, I'm going to go for a very wide depth of field with this lens. It would be f1.8, and these are the aperture and f-stop are interchangeable terms. I use them both. So our f-stops are numbers like 1, 8, 2, 8, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, 16, and 22. And aperture is just another term for the same thing. Still 2, 8, 4, 5, 6, 8, da da da. I guess I'll step back where you can see me a little bit better. So first thing I'm going to do is turn that on, and I'm going to shoot my first one at f1.8 so you can kind of see what shallow depth of field looks like. So also look right at me. Alright, so this is shallow depth of field. Like I said, shot that at f1.8, just wide open, and now I'm switching to f22, which you can see, small hole and much larger is. And then the second one, what I want is, I want those clouds, I want that car, I want everything behind her as sharp as I can get it. So that's how that works. And I will show you pictures right now. And there is a lot to learn about kind of how they work in conjunction. That if I go with a slow shutter speed, I need a smaller aperture, and if I need a bigger aperture, I need a faster shutter speed, and so on. And it's basically all about accumulating light. That reminds me, I'm actually going to go back in the beginning and add a little bit about overexposure and underexposure to make it a little bit easier to understand. But that's not what I'm doing here at the table now with the truck, and you can't see Elsa because she's just off camera, but she's ready to push the truck past, so I can kind of show you a little bit about shutter speed and motion. So first off, I'm going to start with a fast shutter speed. And fast, it's always relative. It has to do with how fast it's covering my focal plane and so on. But relatively fast shutter speed, be in the neighborhood of like 1/25 of a second. And so when Elsa shoves the truck past me, I'm going to make a picture. And what's funny is you'll see the camera that you're watching from in the background of the other picture. But all right, let's see the truck go by us. Okay, that's a little disappointing. Shove it with some speed. Make sure it gets to the other end. All right. Perfect. Now you can go get the truck. All right, so although I will show you this, pretty much just a clear picture of the truck. We'll just call that good enough with fast shutter speed. What I want to do now is move to a slow shutter speed, which is like so. See how that goes. All right, here it goes. All right, so see how that goes. All right, here it goes. All right, well, an eighth of a second, you can see, is actually very blurry. So I'm going to say, you know what? I don't want my truck quite that blurry. I'm going to go up to a 30th of a second, which is 2 stops different. You can see how our truck looks now. Alright. And now I have a moderately blurry truck. And then the kind of the other concept is panning. So I'm going to, you can kind of see it. But panning means that as the truck goes by, I'm going to try and lock onto it. So I'm going to stay with my slow shutter speed of a 30th of a second, and I'm going to pan with the truck. And the desired effect is that the truck will be stationary in relation to the camera, and the background will be moving. So the truck should be almost sharp. You know, it's my ability to stay on it is a little bit suspect. But, and then the background is blurred. So also we'll shove our truck one last time. All right. And very exciting panning pictures. All right. So that's kind of those concepts. When I've done these demonstrations, what I've done is we kind of have two different ways of coming at it. So your camera may have modes. There's also, I'm done with you. If you can hang out and listen about the modes, but you don't have to. Okay. Anyway, so you've got these modes on your camera. Some of your cameras are going to have like a person, a flower, a mountain. Those things are complete garbage. Don't ever use those. And just so you know, I can see that data and kind of the background information of your pictures, and I'm going to be so disappointed. So then you have the modes that are a little bit more professionals use a little bit more. So you've got manual, which means when I'm in manual mode, I'm controlling both the aperture and the shutter speed myself. And my camera does have a little thing in here. I'll show you a picture of the light meter, and that helps me to decide on those because I am still trying to get the appropriate amount of light. But the other way I can do it is aperture priority, which is just the A. And that means I'm going to choose the aperture, and the camera itself is going to choose the shutter speed that's appropriate to get the amount of light and still use the aperture that I want to use. And then shutter priority is the S, and that's kind of the opposite thing where I'm choosing the shutter speed and the camera is choosing the aperture. And those are the modes that I've used for these demonstrations. Is I just went into aperture mode when I went to 1.8, then my shutter speed went very fast to compensate for the fact that I had it wide open. And then when I went to f/22, I went to a very slow shutter speed to compensate for the fact that I had a very small hole. We need to leave it open a little bit longer to get the appropriate amount of light. But with aperture and shutter modes, it means I'm making those choices for what's most important for me. With the truck, when I'm dealing with motion, then shutter speed is the important thing to me. When I was making the portrait of Elsa outside, the aperture was the more important thing to me. So with those two modes, I'm able to choose which one is important to me. I choose the aperture I want, and the camera chooses the shutter speed. Or when shutter speed is the important thing to me, I choose the shutter speed, and the camera chooses the aperture. The other thing the Nikons have is the P, which is the program, which is really just letting the camera take care of everything. It's really no better than, it may be even worse than your flower, mountain, so on modes. But, you know, on occasion, I don't know. There are times that the P mode makes sense, but really for this class, it doesn't. So, we can also, I could talk to you a little bit about, histograms. So, kind of show you really quickly here. I'm going to go into my M mode, and I'm going to make a picture of Elsa sitting here in the chair. And it's already telling me if I do that, I'm going to be way underexposed. So let me get to something that where my meter is telling me I'm doing a reasonable job. Hey, why don't you slide so you can be in the video too, so everybody can see what I'm doing here. See you and me. Alright. So just making a picture of Elsa sitting in the chair. So here I'm at f2.8, which I've changed lenses here. So this is the wide open aperture for me. And see, it's telling me that I'm a little bit overexposed. So I go to 100. And now I'm right on. And now I'm moving up to 500th of a second, and it's telling me about 2 steps underexposed. So I can look at that stuff on the back of my camera, and really, none of them look that bad to me. But because the back of the camera is really difficult to read. So what you want to do is, generally depends on how your camera works, but when you're looking, you hit the play button, left or right changes pictures, and then up and down gives you different information. And you're able to look at the histograms for different pictures. And that really tells you a little bit more. Alright, so let's see if I can do this. What we're looking at here is a picture of Elsa, and I wanted to show you the histogram that goes along with this. So this is the picture. It's a little bit out of focus, but that's neither here nor there. What I want to show you is what a histogram looks like for an overexposed picture. So what we have here is this is what our blackest black. How much black, absolute black, do we have in here? And it says there's something, but very, very little of it. We've got a little bit of stuff in the middle. These are our midtones here.
And then over here, we've got our highlights. And we can see, really, that's where majority of it is. And we can see that a bunch is pure white. And then what that means is there's areas, we can kind of see over here, there's no detail in there. That should be the shades of the door, and it's just a white block because it's overexposed. Kind of same thing with the refrigerator back here, and some of these other things. And when we look for where's our blackest black, I mean, maybe this, it's just not a lot in there. So then we go, and that's not the one I want to look at. So this is the one that's underexposed, and we look at the levels here. And this one, it's really not terribly underexposed, but what we're seeing is our peak is below the middle. Ideally, we'd like to see the peak in the middle in a normal picture. And what's showing us here is that our whitest thing in there isn't pure white. We've got this whole gap. So what it's saying is the whitest thing in there is only 90% white. And we've got a lot down at the bottom here, which is a little bit of a problem. Looking for the areas that are too dark to hold detail. It's kind of like that back here. That should have some texture to it, and in the last picture it did. So that's looking at this. And the histogram I'm looking at here in Photoshop is the same histogram you'll see on the back of your camera when you check the histogram. You read it the same way. In Photoshop, you're able to make some adjustments, which I'm not going to do right now. And then let's move on to, oh, this is way underexposed. So let's look at this. And just like we expect, right? Tons of stuff down here in the bottom. Some things that are reaching up. This is kind of that tabletop there, most likely, is there. And then nothing at the top. So to correct for that, I could have opened up my aperture a little bit when I'm shooting it, or gone to a longer shutter speed and given it more light, and that would make for a brighter picture and a histogram that doesn't look like this. So the histogram is useful. I mean, this one, when I looked at it on the back of the camera, I'm clearly crazy if I looked at this and thought it looked okay. But the histogram verifies what I would have already known. And in some cases, it's hard to tell without looking at the histogram. So this is more or less normal looking picture of the truck that we saw earlier. And we can see, you know, there's some black shadows here. It's kind of odd. I think the table kind of throws off. We've got a lot of a moderate highlight here, but it's because that table's pretty bright. What we would expect is kind of the peak in the middle. And last thing I want to say about all of that is, yeah, it's a lot to take in. I've basically shown you a smattering of 5 or 6 different concepts. Each of them are being a thing that we're going to spend a week on, and that I expect you to maybe take a couple weeks to grasp. So at this point, you may be going, I am overwhelmed. There's a lot of things to learn. You know what? It is a lot of things to learn, but we are going to go systematically, one piece at a time. You'll get it. It's not as hard as it may seem at first. So that's it. But yeah, don't expect that this 25-minute video, you're expected to have grasped all those things. I'm just telling you, here are the things we're going to be learning in the future. And you should have learned some of the terms like depth of field, aperture, shutter speed, panning, what a histogram looks like. That is a pretty good lesson on how histograms work. So I think histograms are pretty basic. For whatever reason, students struggle with them. So if you need more information on how to read a histogram, which it takes time to get good at it, but you know, just like anything, it takes time to get good at it. But you just don't be overwhelmed. I know it's a lot, and you know, we'll get through it all.